Okay, thank you. Sorry, just making sure that Jan is online and just making sure we can hear him. Next we're going to be talking about trustworthiness of age assurance, and a report that was done for the European Parliament. So Martin Sass is here in the room with us. Martin is a doctoral researcher at KU Leuven in Belgium, so he's passionate about children's online rights. So this is a subject area that you're really personally advocating for, and explores the relevance of age-appropriate designs and other protective measures for children from a legal perspective. He's joined by Jan online. I think we can hear. Jan will support in terms of questions, and Jan is a professor at ULB in Brussels, and the École Polytechnique de Université Libre de Brussels. And his expertise spans many topics, including privacy, safety, security of information, and communications technology. And he has a particular interest in interdisciplinary research for responsible and sustainable development and use of ICTs. So I'll hand over to you guys.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. So I guess if I press this button, we should have my slide there. Well, thank you everyone to being here. Hello. So today I would like to present you some key results of a study that we conducted for the Green EFA group at the European Parliament, and which has the objective to look at age assurance methods from a fundamental right and children's rights perspective, trying to identify what could be the potential risk link with the wide deployment of these technology in the online space. I see that some of you are scanning the QR code, so I might wait before changing the slides. And that will also give me the time to talk a bit more about the methodology. So we did this talk research, reviewing the evaluation report that were already available publicly from data protection authorities, but also civil society organization, and also looking into the technical documentation of different age verification providers. Alongside to that, we also conducted semi-structured interviews with 11 experts from different fields that were representative of regulatory authority, civil society organization, but also academic and industry representative. And among these interviews, we had Ono that is present here, Tony Allen as well, that kindly invited me to present this today, but also Professor Ross John Anderson, who sadly passed away a few weeks ago. So I would like to make a tribute to him and send my condolences to his family and friends. So while talking about age assurance, well, as you know, this is quite a hot topic currently because we see a lot of regulatory initiative that wants to mandate age assurance for different types of services, such as adult content, but also social media. So here you have an overview of the situation. It's slightly a bit outdated, but still give you a clear idea of what is going on both at the European level, but also in the United States. But it's also important to bear in mind that in other geographical areas, there is also initiative towards mandating age assurance. So those regulatory initiatives are pursuing a legitimate objective. That's clear. Children are exposed to a lot of different types of risk online, which can be content-based, contact-based, conduct-based, contract-based. That was already theorized later by Professor Livingstone as well as Dr. Stoliova. And of course, we agreed that an 8-year-old child shouldn't be exposed to pornographic content, neither be put in contact with potential sexual predators while browsing social media or playing a game, or their personal data shouldn't be harvested and used for manipulate them towards addictive patterns and extract a lot of money out of them. Although implementing age assurance on a wide spread of services also impairs the autonomy of both child and adult. Because in our digitalized society, we use a lot of different digital services to exercise our human rights, either to express our opinion or expression online, to access certain information that are very important to us, to assemble with people that we like, including children that want to associate with adults that are providing them support, and also to have right to education, which therefore is important that children also access service that will make them able to develop their skills online and becoming gradually adult that knows how to use online services. And so putting an age gauge that would either prevent access or change the way that those applications are used, interfere with the rights of both children and adults, or condition the exercise of the right also to an intrusion that could be into their privacy, wanting them to because you need to reveal certain personal information, or sometimes you have to go through an age assurance method that might not be fit for your specific situation as an individual. So I'm just grabbing some water. So those are a set of rights that are protected by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, and that should be bear in mind before implementing age assurance. So service providers should think ahead about the necessity of implementing age assurance by assessing the risks that are related to their services and whether they justify an age restriction, but also to see whether the age assurance method would be effective into protecting children on their services. Are there other less restrictive alternative measures that are available to them to also achieve this objective? If so, it should be potentially preferred. They should also assess the proportionality of the age assurance measure, whether it do not overweight the benefit of implementing it, and thinking about what could be done to minimize the adverse impact on the exercise of the fundamental right. Finally, they should also always bear the best interest of the child, which is also protected by the convention, the United Convention on the Right of the Child, striking a fair balance between, on one side, the protection of the child, but also the empowerment of that child to be able to develop their skills. So doing that, for example, by performing impact assessment, which encompasses the broad scope of fundamental right, including data protection right, but also the specific right of children, and putting into balance the risks that are associated with the service with the risks that are associated with the age assurance. So I think that's clear. So let's dive a bit more into the different age assurance method. So in our mapping, we distinguished age estimation from age verification because they don't have the same level of reliability. Age estimation provide a lower as you know, a lower accuracy into determining whether a child is of a certain, whether an individual is of a certain age, while age verification might have a higher degree of certainty, but is also more intrusive. So the different methods that we had were AI profiling, when basically you infer the age of someone on the basis of the behavioral data that you have collected previously. The analysis of biometrics data, which could be facial recognition, but also voice or other type of biometrics. We had an interesting presentation this afternoon about heartbeats and electrocardiograms that we didn't look into those one, but that would be interesting to do as well. And the last one, in terms of age estimation, is the capacity testing, when basically you ask the user to do something, assuming that if the user managed to do this task, they will be of a certain age. Regarding the age verification, so it's mainly identity, official identity based, which can also be paired with a real-time check to see whether the holder is the person that is providing this identity document is actually the holder of this identity document, or whether to check whether there was an alteration of this identity document. And then we also looked at EIDs and proxies of official identity documents, such as credit cards, student cards, where basically are based on the assumption that the entity that issued that document already checked the identity of the user. So a first risk, of course, that we see is the problem regarding the privacy of users. If you want to access a service and that you have to reveal your identity, and that this identity can be linked to your use of the service, then you lose online anonymity. The service is able to track all your behavior on the service, and that opens the door to surveillance for different purposes. So of course, having to provide an identity document to access a porn website is not something that we would recommend. And this is why we need to rely on other type of verification that I will further go later on. So if we collect a lot of data about person, there is also a security, of course, aspect of it, because those data could be eventually misused or be hacked. It could be used to impersonate the person, or if it's the age assurance is based on a credit card, the credit card credential could be used to do credit card fraud, or if the identity of a certain user of a service is leaked, it can then be used to target this user for phishing attacks, scams, or even grooming. Finally, another risk that we see is about discrimination, because certain of the methods listed are not accessible. There are a lot of people that do not have identity documents. That can include refugees or certain communities that already suffer marginalization, and asking for an identity document will prevent them to access certain digital services. Same, for example, for age estimation based on face. If you use an old phone, and a lot of people still are using phones that are not smartphones, if you don't have a camera on your phone, you're not able either to use the facial estimation. Finally, secondly, talking about age estimation, we also see that there might be inaccurate results, given that most of the system and the models that we now have a certain margin of error when you need to be a bit older to match a certain threshold. And so the accuracy, as we were previously talking in the last presentation, is still something that is worked on, and we see that there might be different accuracy level depending on the representativity of the training data set which the model was trained. So it might be discriminating to different people, or often minorities, which were not sufficiently represented into those data sets. And something interesting as well is that actually trying to increase this representativity may also lead to further ratification of those minorities, which are often in situations where they are already marginalized and discriminated, and can lead to further profiling of them, and open risk for more potential misuse. Finally, regarding AI profiling, but as well as capacity testing, how do you determine what is the criteria for someone to be able to do a task? How do you make the link to a certain age? Those are arbitrary and also stereotypical criteria, which can exclude certain people with disabilities or mental condition or neurodivergent or just people with different or kids with different development pace and that are not at the same stage of development. Finally, we also see that there might be a problem of effectivity and also that age assurance may sometimes be counterproductive because of those false positive and negative that would get either a child would get access to an online only space, or worse, an adult would get access to a child only space, which then can create a false sense of security, because if you implement age assurance, you assume that you're in a safe space. If it's not the case, that increases even more the risk to be exposed to certain risk. And we also see that there is also always a room for circumvention. We had another very interesting presentation that this afternoon about a deep fake. That was a clear evidence that there are still some work to do to make sure that circumvention is not possible. And in the end, it will always be possible as well for people to just relocate it to another jurisdiction using a VPN, which can also increase the risk for children if they are locating themselves into jurisdictions that are less protective. Finally, regarding the holistic approach, it's important not to consider age assurance as an endpoint, but to consider it into a broader scope of measures that encompass also supportive tools for the child to develop their skills and to think of age assurance into not only a technological solution, but within a broader scope of intervention, which involve several stakeholders, including parents, including educators, and the children themselves as well. So just to give you a broad overview of the evaluation, so we see that age estimation still doesn't match a high level of reliability, although it will depend on how the model are trained. So there are room for improvement there as well, while age verification based on identity documents provide a higher reliability threshold, but are more privacy intrusive and can lead to security risk. Finally, we see that all the methods also have a problem of inclusivity, as I previously mentioned. So we wanted to focus on biometric analysis, such as facial analysis and also digital identity, because we think that there are a lot of room for improvement by making sure that certain safeguards are put in place and by adopting regulation, but also standardization and certification scheme to make sure that if you use facial age estimation, you don't you only do age estimation and no facial recognition, that everything is deleted, that the image is deleted right after being processed, and that everything happens locally, if possible, on the user's device to avoid any data leak during the transfer to an external server. Same for the electronic identity. So far the problem is that it's not available in a lot of countries, so there is a problem of inclusivity. Because a lot of people won't have access to it, but also depending on how the technology is deployed, there is still some possibility of traceability of how the electronic identity are shared, and therefore it should be make sure that no traceability is allowed, and also to ensure that it is not possible that the identity may be eventually stolen. For example, with a man in the middle attack, when someone is phished into a website that looks like a certified website, and then by scanning a QR code, it transfers the information, the electronic, the attributes, electronic identity attributes to this person. So finally, I wanted to talk as well about the double-blind approach, which is, to our perspective, the best way to ensure that privacy and security are ensured, because without having a third party in the loop, there is a big lack of trust about how your information will be processed, whether or not they will be reused, what is the actual system behind the interface that users are seeing. And so having this third party that could be a trusted third party that have been verified, that have been audited, and that is not known by the service provider is very important, so that the issuer of so by issuing a H token, the third party will not know to what purpose this token will be used. Neither the service provider will know the information of the user, because it will only be a token with data minimization implemented into it, using zero knowledge proof with only the age information, whether they are above or below a certain age, and without information about the user identity. I don't know, in terms of time. Okay. So that's why we emphasize about the importance of mandating the fact to have accredited conformity assessment before releasing, for example, those systems, and to rely on this third-party verifier. So a few remaining challenges. So as I was talking regarding facial analysis, it's very important to build this trust, to enable transparency for the user, and also to audit the system that are placed on the market, because otherwise, if there is not a strong assessment and auditing of the system, is the open door to have a lot of fake websites that may use those systems to collect more and more data from the users. Then, yeah, in terms of the deployment of electronic identity and digital wallet, we see that there are still some challenges as well, because right now, children are actually out of the scope, and that by the time that it will be, for example, developed under the eIDAS framework, it still requires a lot of time and a lot of investment, and it won't happen by tomorrow. And we still see that there are some questions regarding the traceability and also the prevention of identity theft. Regarding the double-blind ecosystem, same issue regarding the timeline, and it requires as well a lot of intervention from the regulators to make sure that the governance inside this ecosystem is well balanced, that there is no combination of the different roles inside this environment, and to also support it, notably regarding its economic model. And finally, we see that the inclusivity and accessibility are hard to address, and there are still a lot of work to do regarding that, as well as the global enforcement regarding the auditing of the different systems. So that's the conclusion, basically, that there is a lack of, that there is a misalignment between the time that is needed to develop this trustworthy age assurance ecosystem and the regulatory pressure that we see for mandating age assurance in more and more under more and more acts. And so we would like to recommend to have a more precautionary principle to make sure that proper impact assessment are done, and that the different system embed those safeguards regarding privacy and security, and that proper auditing is done of those systems. So that's a few recommendations. That might be a bit too much to go through all of them, but that basically summarize what I've told you regarding the implementation of privacy, security, and inclusivity, as well as reliability consideration into the different age assurance system, as well as performing risk assessment ahead before taking the decision to implement them, as well as developing those standard and certification scheme. So I will stop here and leave you the floor for question. I think we have 5 minutes. So yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Jutta Kroll from the Digital Opportunities Foundation, Germany. I have a comment and a question. The comment is that we've bought some copies of General Comment number 25 on children's rights in the digital environment, which you already referred to. So if someone is more interested in that, just take a printout copy or take a postcard where you find a QR code to find it online. My comment is related to that sense of false safety that you've been referring to. We've learned, I think it was yesterday morning, the program was so full, I got a bit confused in a session called The Voice of Children, that children get a false sense of safety when there is the lowest threshold of age assurance, which is just tick a box, say you're under 18 or over 18. What they told in that session is that when they tick that box, it's so easy to circumvent that they think this cannot be a dangerous area because it's so easy. They are used to stronger thresholds in the real world, where they are not allowed to go to a cinema with an overweight video film or so on. So when they face that situation online, they feel it must not be insecure to go into that area because it's just clicking and then I can enter. So I do think it's very much important to pay more attention to this false sense of safety that is given by certain types of safety. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's relevant that they might have this false sense of safety into the current online environment because they are using it every day. They are spending the whole afternoon sometimes on TikTok without realizing the danger, but that doesn't mean the danger is not existing either and that it shouldn't be addressed. But what I was more referring to is when they think that they are into a child-only place, for example, going to a child-specific social media or child-specific games, and that is possible for an adult to use a deepfake to look like a child and get into those space. The implementation of the age assurance measure create this false assumption that there will be in a safe space, and maybe that will result in changing their behavior to be less aware to, or even for the developer of the app to not have other safety measures such as a panic button, for example, or like some prompts or warnings to raise the awareness about a potential risk which may still exist despite the implementation of the age assurance.
Robin Toombs from Yoti. I
right.
just saw, thank you very much for the presentation. I just saw at the end that one of the recommendations for regulators was to avoid mandatory age verification, but could you just talk a little bit more about that? Shorthand, I'm just thinking pornography, alcohol, cigarettes, presumably offline and online. You would think mandatory AA would be appropriate?
I think avoiding mandatory age requirement as such, but more like I didn't put it there, but like my idea was more to have a risk-based approach towards age assurance, that instead of mandating it, and sometimes for certain services it may be legitimate, but really to incentivize service providers to do their due diligence, to assess what are the risks regarding the service, what are the risks regarding age verification, do this balance between the two, and then they will see if it's necessary or not. Because okay, yeah, we have pornography when there is a bigger consensus that it might be needed. For social media, is already much more controversial because, in my opinion, there are ways that to regulate social media in another way without necessarily putting age assurance. And then we have other type of application. For example, in Europe, we have the CSAM regulation proposal, which basically would mandate age verification for any type of apps that you could have on your phone, because they say that Google stores, for example, app stores providers have to identify apps that may have a risk for grooming. And so if the apps could be used for grooming, then they will have to have age gate and prevent the access to any person that is below 16 years old. That is what is written right now in the proposal, and that would lead to basically having age assurance everywhere, which is something that we think is completely disproportional, and that shouldn't be followed as a regulatory path.
Did you look at the risks that kids themselves see? Because this is a very adult-focused approach. We think that we should save them from harm that we think is harm. If I look at my own kids in my classroom, for instance, they're more shocked by animal cruelty and other kids talking about suicide or about anorexia than they are about the things that we think they should worry about. So have you looked into that?
No, I think definitely it's super relevant because, like, for example, just taking the audiovisual media directive, they say that children shouldn't access harmful content without defining what is harmful. And so depending on your culture, what is harmful is also seen as very differently. Like the German would be less caring about nudity than other country, while I don't know, in Pakistan or other, I don't want to talk about any different culture, but we see that there is a divergence into what we consider harmful as a society. So already it's difficult to set like clear standards. And so for regulators that doesn't necessarily consult children is also difficult. It's also difficult for the designer to adapt. And I don't think service providers should be the one deciding what is appropriate or not for a child, and also implementing it in a very strict way without giving kind of leeway for different parents and families to also adapt what is appropriate for their child or not, because it's cultural based, but it's also sometimes just an individual sensitivity, and it depends on families. And so I think it's for the freedom of information and for the freedom of information and cultural diversity, there are balance that should be found there, and hearing about what the child have to say, consulting them about what they find appropriate or not is a must. So yeah. I don't know, and Tobias, do you want to add something on those? Because if you're still with us.
No, I think I'm fine. Thank you very much for all the cool answers that you've been providing.
Okay. Are there no other questions?
I have a final question for you. So you spoke about double blinding and the importance of that around privacy.
Yes.
How do you explain, so we all understand that and why it works, how do you understand that to the end user, and who explains that to the end user?
I think it's also a challenge, like in terms of usability, like would a child be able to hold a wallet and to understand that it has to self-manage it is still a question, but I think that might eventually be solved with better education and better awareness already early at school, but it's still quite a challenge. And we see that there are also risks that are linked to self-management, such as oversharing, when you don't realize that the service providers, even though you share For example, I'm taking the example of electronic identities. It's not only the age attributes that is there, but much more information that are linked to your identity. And so service providers can request more than it needs beyond the simple age. And if you're not aware enough as a user, you might just click on the consent button without realizing that you shouldn't reveal those information either. So there is a challenge of usability regarding that, that's for sure. But
yeah, there's it on that.
Maybe on that one, I would like to chip in if you have one more minute.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
of course, even as researchers in the field of cybersecurity, most of us don't fully understand zero knowledge proofs, right? But I know of a series of exciting new research in that direction that focuses on explainability of these techniques. And I think right now we are also still far away from having the infrastructure available to build a zero knowledge age verification platform. So I think if these two things are being developed hand in hand together with benchmarking catalogs and criteria for evaluating them, I think we can actually get there within a few days, within a few years, and build a system that is privacy preserving and understandable. So I have hopes that we could actually develop that within the course of a few years.
Brilliant, thank you. I like a few days you said to start with, so I'll hold you to that for you.
Yeah, no, of course not. No.
Brilliant. Any more questions before we wrap up for today? Brilliant. Thank you, Martin, Jan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.